Now, just a little warning here at the start that there will be some major spoilers for the latest episode of Wandavision, which is the 7th episode, or the one called Breaking the Fourth Wall. So if you have not seen it yet and you don't want anything ruined, it's a really good time to click away. Okay, so first of all here, yes, it looks like I was very much wrong in previous reviews when I thought this series might end up taking a bit of a more simpler route when it comes to explanations and what they would or would not bring into the show, and then hence bring into the MCU itself. Because I feel like with this episode, the floodgates were opened and tons of interesting things were revealed without too much actually happening in terms of story progression when you really think about it, but that's fine considering just how much there is to process here, and that there are 2 episodes left to have it all play out in. And on a bit of a related side note here, it's kind of amazing how far we've come or how much has been brought into the MCU since the start, since that first Iron Man movie, which was basically set, or felt like it was set, in a world very much mirroring our own, or felt grounded in reality, again, like our own world. It all started with a guy in a special suit of armor, and slowly but surely we've had everything from aliens to alternate dimensions to time travel and everything in between brought in. And it's all happened so gradually and organically that it feels, dare I say, still realistic somehow. And so Marvel has not only found a way to bring actual comic books to life or to live action in a believable way, but to bring in some of the more out there aspects of comic books themselves without it feeling cheesy or just utterly ridiculous. And that just might be the most impressive thing of all about the MCU. And nowhere is that more evident than with this series WandaVision, which features a woman who gained powers after being experimented upon with a magical stone, one of 6 that when brought together can do pretty much anything, including snapping half the universe out of existence. And she went on to make a sort of pocket reality in New Jersey that mimics sitcoms from across the decades, and she did it in order to bring the man she loved back to life, only he's not a man per se, he's part AI construct, part robot created by another robot who wanted to destroy the world, and part magical stone. And it seems as if a literal witch has interest in the children they have together, which were magically created, of course, and it's also quite possible that an interdimensional demon or an evil elder god may also have interest in these kids as well. But anyway, here to get down to it, in the least surprising twist of the show so far, it turns out Agnes is not just Agnes, she's actually Agatha Harkness, another character from the comics. And I know I said I thought she might just be Agnes. I thought they were making it so obvious that she was something special that they might just try and surprise us by not making her special, by making her nothing more than a random person caught up in all of this. But it turns out subverting expectations just for the sake of it is still reserved for another franchise. And to be honest here, I'm not overly familiar with Agatha Harkness from the comics, though I'm sure there are plenty of videos up and out there right now on YouTube discussing her full story if you'd like to know more about her. However, I do know she was a bit of a teacher to Wanda and that she knew or believed that Wanda's children were actually creations or part of Mephisto's soul, and she would wipe Wanda's memory in regards to her own kids. She'd make her forget her own children after Mephisto took them back, and that later Wanda would kill Agatha for doing that. As for what, if anything, that all means in regards to how the show will play out and what Agatha's motives are exactly, well, who knows for sure, but considering how the show itself played the reveal, literally played it with their little song and glimpse behind the scenes at all she'd done or been doing or responsible for, it seems she's been working against or manipulating Wanda the whole time, and likely to get her hands on the twins, on Billy and Tommy, which does happen at the end of the episode. As for what exactly she's going to do with them, again, who knows, but it seems, as many have predicted, that an even larger villain is lurking behind the scenes, with the 2 most likely suspects being either Mephisto or Shaitan, and there seem to be clues pointing at both, or maybe either one of them in this episode. We briefly saw a fly on the window at one point, and we know the first time Mephisto showed up in the comic books, he did so in the form of a fly, so that could be a clue leading to him. But then there was also that strange spellbook we briefly saw, which could be the Darkhold, a book of dark magic essentially, that was written by the elder god Shaitan, a being that has possessed Wanda before in the comic books and that Doctor Strange himself helped free her from. And then when you put together, we know that this series will tie into the movie Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and that Elizabeth Olsen, who plays Wanda, said there was a Luke in the Mandalorian level cameo in the show. It seems to be quite possible that Shaitan is the one behind this all, that he will possess her in an effort to return, and that Doctor Strange shows up to help her, which all leads into the movie. Though one maybe problem with all this is that the Darkhold has shown up in the MCU before, and it didn't look like this book. It appeared in both Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and in the show Runaways. However, it's kind of unclear just how much either of those shows are a part of the MCU, or maybe I should say the universe we see the films in, and now this series. And yes, S.H.I.E.L.D. has crossed over with the actual movies on multiple occasions. The events of Winter Soldier even greatly impacted the course of the show, but I suppose it's always possible it takes place in a very similar universe, but not the one we see the actual MCU movies in. Another cool part of this episode then was we saw Monica Rambeau get her powers. I think we had that absolutely confirmed when she did a classic superhero landing at one point, as if the glowing eyes and use of powers didn't give it away first. And in the comics, she was of course the original Captain Marvel, getting her powers from extra-dimensional energy, which is very similar to how she seems to have gotten them here, by crossing into the Hex multiple times. And she was warned last week by Darcy that crossing back and forth was changing her cells at the molecular level. Now obviously she's not going to be called Captain Marvel. She'll likely either be called Photon or Spectrum, with my guess being the latter. The other sort of big part of this episode then was Vision trying to get back to Wanda after Vision had noticed Darcy and freed her mind, and learned everything that had happened and is happening now. And so, though yes, I really enjoyed this episode, and I'm more than happy to be wrong about pretty much all my predictions, it felt more like an episode that just sort of, set the board for the final act, or the last two episodes to come, more than anything else. It pulled back most of the curtain and just sort of showed us what's been going on and explained it, though thankfully in a way that wasn't just pure exposition. And so kind of going along with what I was saying before, I'm a bit surprised at just how much they're embracing and how deep into the lore they're willing to go. I appreciate how much Marvel trusts its audience to be able to follow and understand things that are, again, kind of out there and strange, or could or would easily be if not sort of slowly easing into them. Because you have to keep in mind, the majority of people who watch likely have never read a comic book in their life and are learning everything as they go. And this is something that The Mandalorian did as well. It too dug into the lore and brought in concepts or storylines from elsewhere, which, not to get too far off topic, is one of the reasons I think the sequels were a failure while The Mandalorian was so beloved. The sequels neither carried on or used much of the previous parts of the story, nor really brought in anything new or interesting. It felt mostly like a rehash of previous parts of the story, whereas Marvel just keeps building and building and building, until, again, we've gotten to the point where the odd is wholly and quickly embraced by fans and the general audience. Heck, it's even brought in an actor and sort of character from another universe entirely, from the X-Men universe, though the X-Men universe is likely going to join with the MCU in some way, and everyone just goes along with it and is more curious about what it could mean than anything else. And as someone who's read comics on and off for his whole life, it's great to see this sort of comic book mentality embraced and enjoyed by more of a general audience. It's great to see people willing to go with the flow and trusting in the storytellers. Anyway here, my apologies because this probably wasn't much of a review of the episode so much as it was a recap and me sort of being impressed at what the MCU has done and is continuing to do. And I'm hesitant to make any more guesses or theories here, not because I'm afraid to be wrong again, but because I'm not sure where this is going next. And I do love that about the show. Just the whole mystery and how slowly but surely it reveals everything in a really exciting way is the best part of the show. And I love how Marvel, or the MCU, has managed to capture the spirit and feel of actual comic books, and I am just enjoying the ride. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you thought of the latest episode and what you think will happen next. Whatever the case may be, leave a comment below and let's talk some Marvel. And until next time, thanks for watching.